Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, I hope that you're doing well, everything's going well, and hey, welcome into the program. So today on the show, we have a full hour of computer and technology news. I hope that you are ready for that. A lot of great stories and things like that. Why don't we go ahead and just kind of mention real quick, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including today's show notes, past shows, future shows, all that kind of thing. Trust me, it's there's a lot of stuff there on the website, and you should definitely go check that out. Now, in the meantime, though, everyone, why don't we just say that, hey, we're heading into, a more normal schedule. Of course, we were just off yesterday for Martin Luther King Day, and shouldn't be any more days off for a long while now. So, everyone, if you're ready for Computer America, let's go ahead and get started. So, here we go. Computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America. Okay, everyone, so I think that our first story that we're going to go to is, let's see. I think our first story that we're going to do is actually going to be about, well, it's technology, and although it may be a little bit more business-oriented, but that's okay. Frontier, if you've ever heard of them, or if you happen to be one of their customers, could be a little bit of a rocky time. Looks like Frontier Communications. It's an ISP in 29 states, and it plans to file for bankruptcy. And this coming to us from Ars Technica, Mr. John Brodkin. Although Bloomberg was the one who originally reported it, we can go ahead and go check that out. Actually, we're going to go ahead and take it directly from the source. As much as we love Ars Technica, let's go ahead and check it out. From Bloomberg, saying that Frontier tells creditors it seeks a March bankruptcy. And Frontier Communications Corp, the provider of telecom services in 29 states, is asking creditors to help craft a turnaround deal that includes filing for bankruptcy by the middle of March, according to people with knowledge on the matter. And the company executives, including Bernie Han, Frontier's new chief executive officer, met with creditors and advisors on Thursday and told them that the company wants to negotiate a prepackaged agreement before $356 million of its debt payments come due March 15th. They asked not to be identified because the meeting was private, and a representative for Frontier declined the comment. Such deals typically involve a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which would allow the company to keep operating without interruption of telephone and broadband services to the customers. That is the part that I really wanted to get to here with the program. Will this affect anyone with an internet service through Frontier? And one would, of course, hope no, everything's going to continue. There's, of course, Chapter 7, Chapter 11. Don't want to get too much into the financials of it. But as far as I can tell, as I mentioned, Chapter 11 allows them to keep operating as they normally would. So they continue to provide internet service, and really this is just their way of kind of rounding up all their debt, saying, here's all the cards on the table, let's go ahead and refinance this so that we can continue to operate. And of course, this is going to, this is just going to hopefully make the company better overall. This is what Chapter 11 normally does, but hey, you never know. And Frontier, they're so big that they don't offer service in my area, but I have heard of the company, and that usually means that they're pretty darn big because municipal ISPs just generally don't get that much of just generally don't get that much attention. Frontier is huge. I mean, 29 different states. They operate a ton of different networks out there, and the problem that we have here is that, well, the problem that we have here is that when Frontier, which is one of the largest players in the market currently, goes out of business, if they do, obviously Chapter 11, they don't always go swimmingly. There are things that can come up, and this could, of course, result in them being purchased by another company. But if that happens, you're looking at anywhere from just like Comcast, AT&T, Time Warner was purchased by Charter, just a few of these companies. Like, it's just a handful. We're only down to like less than 10 major internet service providers, and many of them don't operate in the same areas as their competitors. So, if you go to South Florida, you may only have two. If you go to California, you may only have one, two, or three in highly populated areas. And then if you go into the more rural places, you're looking at 0 to 1 if you're lucky. And they know that they have a dedicated customer, because how the heck are you supposed to survive in this day and age without the internet, and still be either competitive for your small business, competitive, if you're trying to work from home, or if you're even doing something as simple as like paying your bills, you need the internet. So it's just further proof that we do not have a healthy, diverse ecosystem of internet service providers, and it's just not good. So to wrap this up, they're saying that a Frontier bankruptcy would rank as one of the biggest telecom reorganizations since WorldCom in 2002. Frontier has been in talks with advisors about possible solutions to its $17.5 billion debt load, which has become a heavy burden as people stop using landlines. And that's okay. If a company did not see landline termination as a possible eventuality, I don't know what to tell them. And they said that they've been talking about $17.5 billion debt load, which has become a very heavy burden. And I think that's where we're going to leave it there. But again, my main point here is that if you have Frontier, you're going to be okay. They should continue to operate as they go through this whole thing in March. But in the long term, we've seen Chapter 11s just kind of go sideways, and it did not work out well for their customers. So start looking up some alternatives. But you should always, just as a general point of topic, you should always be looking for alternatives to cable companies. They know that people shop around when their 1 year, 2 year promotional rate that has locked them in kind of ends. People typically should, and I say should because not that they do, but they should shop around for competitors and say, we're going to go with the others. I've noticed that over the past couple of years when I've done this, for my home, or when I've heard other people try to do this themselves, if an internet company knows that there's no other game in town, and then when you pull the very scary card of we're going to go with someone else, that doesn't work as well as it used to anymore. So they tend to actually even shoot that idea down altogether. You can try, and most of the time it works. If your promotional rate has ended, call them up, get another promotional rate, save yourself the $120, $140 a year, or $200 a year that you could be getting. Don't ever just sit on a non-promotional rate. That's just kind of dumb. So definitely do that, and there you go. So, continuing on here, that was our first story, and that was, of course, about Frontier, the internet company. Let's get a little bit more technical, but something a little bit more technical about, what we definitely what we enjoy here on the show, and that is the hardware. And this is actually coming to us directly from AMD CEO Dr. Lisa Su, talks new Ryzen 4000 chips and outperforming Intel. And this is coming to us from The Verge. Yeah, this is great. Saying that Dr. Su led AMD's press conference live at CES in Las Vegas to reveal the company's new Ryzen 4000 series of processors based on the company's 7-nanometer Zen 2 architecture. Saying that she later sat down with Verge editor-in-chief to talk further about about some further questions. And actually, this is a long-form interview. We highly recommend you go check it out. It's actually the Verge's version of a podcast. But, just kind of picking some things out here. So 7-nanometer, it's something that Intel and NVIDIA have been working very, very hard on. Intel, notably, has had a lot of trouble getting those 7-nanometer dies actually working. And for those of you who are out there saying, well, who really cares about 7-nanometer? Obviously, Intel's still working with the 14-nanometer architecture out there. Smaller dies mean that they are more energy efficient, more heat efficient. They can fit more processors into a smaller amount of area. And overall, it just means that they are, in most ways, better processors. A little bit more expensive, but if you can get the fabrication done correctly, then hey, you're good to go. And I've heard through one of the other articles, not this one in particular, but one of them is that AMD is able to do something that a lot of other competitors in the market just aren't able to do. And that's with their 7-nanometer architecture, they're able to produce chips, and where Intel, with their design process that they're working on, they're only able to use about 30% of the chips that they actually manufacture because they actually meet specs and they're good to go. Whereas AMD is able to use 90% of the chips that they produce in the 7-nanometer form factor. So that means that where, for Intel, if you have to throw away 70% of your products and scrap it and try over, just try to reuse it, as opposed to AMD where, 1 out of 10 chips doesn't work, yeah, it's going to be a lot more cost effective and it's going to look a lot better for your bottom line. And hopefully you're able to offer these for a much lower price than Intel could. It's a very interesting position AMD has found themselves in by really investing in this manufacturing technique and leapfrogging Intel and NVIDIA, even for their graphics cards. Later this year, I think that NVIDIA is, AMD is planning on unveiling a graphics card that should be cheaper than NVIDIA and like 30% increase in performance. Although actually, they have a quote here from Dr. Lisa Su saying that 59% in GPU performance, 59% improvement is faster than Ice Lake, up to 15% faster in some measures that you're quoting, and more. So AMD overall is just looking super good. This is all, of course, through interviews and press releases from AMD, but I'm really excited to see what they have coming down, coming down the road, because it seems like their investment is starting to pay off, and hey, that could be definitely a good thing. Now, let's see. So I think for our next story number 3, we're going to talk a little bit about Tesla. And there was an article, or at least, there was an article back on Friday about something that could have proven really, really bad for Tesla. And that was a faulty acceleration claim, which is not something that Intel, the last source on my mind. It's not something that Tesla is completely, new to. People all the time have claimed that their Teslas are speeding up for any reason. Some of them claim that it's because they have the autopilot. Some claim that it's just a malfunction of the computer. And time again, most times, I think there's only been a couple of times where Tesla said, yes, this is faulty from our side, but most of the time it turns out to be user error. And some of the times that it was bad, it was proven to be something as simple as a software fix that they could push out to everyone who bought their cars. To a software fix where they could push out to everyone who bought their cars, as opposed to something like a total recall of their cars. So they've avoided disaster for a while. And now there's this new allegation from a gentleman who said that there was faulty acceleration in the car. So in a response, here's where Tesla came out yesterday and said, in a response to a petition to the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, whatever, they said that they complained about sudden, unexpected acceleration in a variety of Tesla models and model years. Tesla issued a forceful statement today, claiming that the allegations are completely false. Tesla opened a statement by identifying the petition as a Tesla short seller, and that the petition was brought by Brian Sparks, an independent investor who was currently shorting Tesla stock. Money, money, money. It makes people do crazy things, even potentially, defaming an entire company. Saying that we investigate every single incident where the driver alleges to us that their vehicle accelerated contrary to their input. In every case, we have the vehicle's data. We confirm that the car operated as designed, which is essentially to say either the people were lying or it was operator error. Tesla has had long and contentious relationship with government regulators, and Tesla today said that it's transparent with the NHTSA and routinely reviews customer complaints of unintended acceleration with them. So with that being said, I don't know. They said that the NHTSA said it would review the petition as part of its standard practice in such matters, but overall they said, hey, this is someone trying to make money off of Tesla's pullback that would come from the negative news that their car was faulty. So that's good. Good for Tesla. Shame on that guy. Now, story number 3. Story number 4. We have tons of different stories here. And story number 4, how about we do something that is a little bit uplifting, if we can even find something like that. You know what? This one perfectly uplifting. We're going to do it. We haven't talked about Microsoft much. Microsoft has been quietly and I want to say, kind of expertly staying out of the news. They've just been... Sorry about that. They've just been, happily chugging away, doing their thing, and, that's perfectly fine. That's kind of what you expect of a tech company. Well, check this one out here. This coming to us from CNN Business, and Microsoft wants to eradicate its carbon footprint by going emissions negative by 2030. And what does that mean? Who the heck knows? But let's find out. So again, CNN Business, Microsoft is making an ambitious commitment to eliminate its carbon footprint by pledging to go carbon negative in the next decade and investing $1 billion to help develop clean technologies, saying that the tech giant said Thursday it will seek to remove more carbon than it emits by 2030. Saying that while the world will need to reach net zero, those of us who can afford to move faster and go further should do so. And that is according to Microsoft's president, Brad Smith. The company's plans involve cutting its carbon emission, projected to be around 16 million metric tons this year, by more than half, both in its own operation and across its supply chain, which is a very interesting point. Not a lot of companies really own up to it, but the entire, especially in technology, the entire supply chain that goes into producing these hardware solutions, that should be taken into consideration for these individual companies as well. Because think about something like Apple. Yeah, Apple can say that, we don't produce any carbon emissions at our headquarters, at our stores, in malls or standalone stores all over the country. But in reality, they do a lot of their manufacturing overseas, and that could be a huge part of their carbon footprint if you included that. So it's very nice to see that Microsoft is owning up to it, saying, hey, we can account for that. So the company plans involves cutting carbon emissions, like I said, about half, and saying that we will fund this in part by expanding our internal carbon fee, saying that they have a $15 per metric ton tax. Wow, $15 per metric ton. That all Microsoft businesses units pay based on their emissions. And then that fee, which was instituted in 2012 and nearly doubled last year, will be broadened to include indirect emissions such as activity from manufacturing, business travel, and electricity customers may use on its products. Even going that far. Although they did not say mining the minerals that go into their equipment, because you can bet all of that, all of that iron, all of that coal, to make the steel for all their products, things like that, and of course all the rare precious earth metals. That's something too. But hey, it's a start. So they said that by 2050, Microsoft said it will remove from the environment all the carbon the company has emitted either directly or by electrical consumption since it was founded in 1975, which is awesome. I mean, think about that. In the next 30 years, if everything goes as planned, they're going to be able to take out what they've been doing for the past 50 years. That's very impressive. And Microsoft pledge comes as tech companies face mounting pressure from shareholders to, of course, take a strong stance on climate change. Amazon last year said that it would buy and deploy 100,000 electric vans by 2024 as part of a broader plan to cut carbon emissions to net zero by 2040. The next day, Amazon employees staged a previously planned walkout over the company's perceived inaction on climate change, and the group applauded Amazon's climate pledge at the time, but said it was still not enough, which is very true. 100,000 electric delivery vans is something, but when you consider all the planes that they now own, I'm sure that just a handful of those planes are negated by those electric vans. So a lot more needs to be done. Google, of course, has been carbon neutral since 2007, partly thanks to offset programs that involve purchasing carbon credits. If you don't know what those are, essentially what they're saying is we'll pay someone else to do the work for us. And yeah, there you go. So with that being said, Smith admitted that it won't be easy for Microsoft to go carbon negative by 2030, but hey, it's something that they need to do. And of course, going forward, even after 2030 or after 2050, when they've pulled all of the carbon, and carbon is really the major greenhouse gas that they're talking about here, but when they're able to pull all the carbon out of the atmosphere, everything after that is just gravy. I mean, that's where a company can then pull even more out of the environment after that, which would help everyone. Admittedly, one company doing this won't make much of a difference. All the tech companies in the world doing this won't make that much of a difference. But at least companies are starting to understand that they need to, if they're not part of the solution, they at least can't be part of the problem. And that's where we're seemingly ending up. Is just, don't ruin the planet as you're, kind of doing business as usual. So let's go ahead and continue on here. That one's pretty interesting. Let's talk about Studio Ghibli. I'm not that big of a fan of Studio Ghibli. I will be completely honest with you. There are a number of movies that people just completely adore. They include everything from Castle in the Sky, My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Only Yesterday, Porco Rosso, Ocean Waves, and Tales from Earthsea. And so that's the first wave, and there's even more, including things like Princess Mononoke, all that kind of stuff, Spirited Away. These films, if you don't know what they are, then this announcement probably doesn't matter all that much to you. But if you do know what those films are, then you should be super excited for, Netflix. Netflix said that they will be able to, they signed a deal, and 21 of Studio Ghibli's feature films will be coming to US, Canada, and Japan on Netflix. So there you go. The company will add the movies to its libraries in waves starting next month, and until very recently, Studio Ghibli refused to offer digital copies of its content in any format. Last month, the company started selling downloadable copies, however, and Warner Brothers Media announced that it had attained U.S. streaming rights for its upcoming spring launch in HBO Max. Though, with Netflix's acquisition, the movie will be made available across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and the Americas. Netflix is subtitling the movies in 28 languages and providing new dubs for up to 20 languages. So there you go. February 1st, March 1st will be, will be the two waves, and it will include most, if not all, of the 21 feature films. Hey, very, very cool. I know that people have been really passionate about these. Like the article said, the studio behind, or, Studio Ghibli, has been very protective of their IPs. They have not, really offered digital download or anything like that of their movies. You had to buy them on disc, Blu-ray, what have you. And, just having them widely available directly from the studio has not really happened, but seeing that Netflix was able to hammer out this deal is going to be certainly big, and hopefully introduce these films to a larger audience. It will probably be my first time seeing these, but like I said, so many people love these. It's going to be a good thing. So there you go, some more good news. Let's talk about the fate of all smart devices. And we're going to, kind of focus on Under Armour. They make clothing. They're huge sponsors in athletics in so many ways. But check this one out. This is part of the contract that you sign when you purchase one of these connected devices. And it's not that, you have a scale. And this is what we're going to be talking about, is the Under Armour connected scale, where I'm sure most people, they step on the scale and they hope that no one ever finds out. But no, some people actually want to know, and it either sends it to another app, it sends it to themselves so that they can keep track of it more easily. Check this one out though, saying that the company quietly pulled its Under Armour Record app from both Google Play and the Apple App Store on New Year's Eve in an announcement dated sometime around January 8th. Under Armour said that not only has the app been removed from all app stores, but the company is no longer providing customer support or bug fixes for its software, which will completely stop working as of March 31st. Under Armour is not a small player in the connected fitness device market. They launched this lineup in 2016. The trio of trackers included a wrist-worn activity monitor, a smart scale, and a chest strap style heart rate monitor. And the scale and the wristband retailed at about $180 each, with the heart monitor going for about $80. Shoppers could buy all three for about $400, and really that's what you're looking at. $400 later, what do you have? Don't get me wrong. They're still going to perform their basic functions. If it's a smartwatch, or I should say, if it's an activity monitor, it should still monitor activity. It just won't be able to tie in with any API. It won't be able to report to any other apps or things like that. Maybe not even to its own app, which is, as they mentioned, has been pulled. The smart scale will still operate as a scale. It just won't be able to send that data to another app. Essentially, all connected functionality of these is going to go away completely. And really, there's no reason to buy these things over something that would be much cheaper if it didn't have, if it didn't have those connected features. So they said that in 2017, less than 2 years after its launch, the company gave up on the project. Healthbox and the three products comprising it gradually vanished from both literal and digital store shelves. And along with that, they It just seems like Under Armour really decided to pull back from the connected health market, which personally I think is a bad move. People love data, people love recording their fitness, and it just seems like it's going to make a lot of sense to stay in the field. But current device owners also can't export all their data. While workout data can be exported and transferred to some other tracking apps, record users cannot capture weight or other historical data to carry forward with them. A reader tells Ars Technica that Under Armour did not provide any notification of Record's demise to a customer who were using the app, basically springing the sunset date on them as a silent surprise. And, they said, and the article wraps up by saying that when this pattern plagues something small and inexpensive like a smart light bulb, the disconnection is annoying, but completely low stakes. But when it's something like a $300 smart hub or a $1,200 worth of home security products, consumers who invested a fair amount of cash may finally see themselves up a creek. And this is something that is going to happen more and more. It's not even so much about buying a connected device, because some of these devices you're going to be able to find for much cheaper in other places. You're buying into an ecosystem. And even though over the past couple of weeks, we've been mentioning ever since CES that these ecosystems are continuously interconnected, they're going to work with each other, it's going to be great. There's no need to really differentiate which network you really want to be in, because they're all going to just work. The truth of the matter is that when you buy into each one of these platforms, you're kind of betting which one is going to have the most longevity. It's really going to depend on what kind of device you own. If it's something, that is really heavily influenced by technology, it has a clear product lifespan of 3, 4, 5 years, you're probably okay. But at the same time, if it's something much, much longer lasting, like an entire home security system that you're just going to add to or change very, very lightly in the coming 5, 10, 15 years, then you want to make sure that it's a company that is going to not only be around, but has proven to shown continued support of its products over a long period of time. And I think where that's really going to make a difference is home security, home appliances, things like that. You don't want to buy, let's say, internet connected washer dryer from a no-name company that's just going to pull support for the product over the course of, just a couple of years. That's not the way to go. That's one of the few times I would highly recommend going with a reputable, even if it costs more money, go with a reputable company with a track record. So there you go. Pushing through, let's talk about, let's go ahead and talk about, Boeing. Also interesting. A little bit more business news, but hey, it's okay. If you didn't know, Boeing is going through some stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. What Boeing has been having to do with the Boeing 737 MAX, and again, I'm not saying that anyone is doing this unjustly to Boeing. Back in 2018, they had a crash that killed 189 people. And then, of course, another crash back in March 2019 that killed another 159 people. Definitely could have been avoided. It was done through either faulty sensors, or as I've heard it explained, it's probably more likely to insufficient training given to the pilots, where the pilots would sit behind the controls of a 737 MAX. They said that these are almost identical to what you're used to. And then turns out that there was a new safety feature, the anti-stall device, that when no one told them about it, turns out that, there was one little feature that could completely nosedive the plane into the ground, killing all aboard. So, the 737 MAX has been grounded, and if these things are grounded, that means that Boeing can't actually sell their products that they're making. And yet, the global demand for their planes is still increasing. So a lot of these are still being made, and a lot of them are just sitting idly on runways or in warehouses somewhere, wherever the heck you park a plane. Turns out that this has not been good for Boeing's bottom line. And what they've decided to do is, well, the only thing they really can do, which is borrow more money. Boeing is seeking to borrow $10 billion as the 737 MAX crisis continues. So they said that Boeing's short-term debt and current portion of its long-term debt added together at $4.4 billion as of September 30th. Boeing declined to comment on the $10 billion in new debt when contacted by Ars. Boeing in October reported Q3 2019 revenue of about $20 billion, down from about $25 billion year over year. Revenue for the first 9 months of 2019 was $58.6 billion, down 19% year over year. Overall, it just means that, well, when you do one thing, and that is making these entire airplanes, and I know that Boeing does a lot more than just one thing, but when really the cornerstone of its business is making these planes, and its planes just aren't working right, you're now seeing the fallout from that, and you're seeing just what can go bad. So, of course, Boeing fired CEO Dennis Muhlenberg in December 2019 and replaced him with a former board chairman, David Calhoun. So, there you go. We'll see if $10 billion worth of loans will be long enough for Boeing to actually get these planes out, essentially out the door and into service, and hopefully no more crashes. That would be ideal. So there's Boeing again, $10 billion. Don't we wish that we could all ask for that when in a pinch? This next one's different, and I really don't know whose side I take on this one. I really don't care too much. Like, I don't need to care about Amazon, because Amazon, the company, is so stinking rich that it really doesn't matter. But at the same time, as much as I understand the plight that the Amazon rainforest is currently going through deforestation, through illegal harvesting, through poaching, through, the indigenous tribes there are just unfortunately losing their territory, losing their land. And of course, in so many ways are just their way of life is being encroached upon. The Amazon rainforest does need some very justifiable attention. Now, here's the difference. This coming to us from the Register, and South American nations open fire on ICANN. ICANN, if you don't know, they handle the web addresses. So if you want to register computeramerica.com, one of the places you could purchase your certification from would be through ICANN, who hands out the domains. So ICANN for illegal and unjust sale of .amazon to zillionaire Jeff Bezos. And technically, he's probably not a zillionaire, but I get what they're saying. They're doing this over money. And by the way, ICANN is a domain name server overseer. I don't know which side I take on this one. I really don't. It's the article seems to really come down on the side that .amazon should be available to companies from that region of the world so that they could utilize it. But I don't know. So 8 South American governments have vowed to make life difficult for DNS overseer ICANN after it gave the .amazon top level domain to the U.S. tech giant headed by Jeff Bezos. In a letter PDF sent on Friday to the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, responded badly to a missive. And by the way, I just kind of rambled through that one. The Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. That is the organization set up by these 8 South American governments, not the Amazon, the corporation. Now, They said that they respond badly to a missive from ICANN's president saying it was going ahead with adding the address to the global internet, calling the decision illegal and unjust, as well as an act of force. It criticizes ICANN's attempts to legitimize a decision that was not taken under legitimate circumstances nor for legitimate reasons, and vows vague revenge by disseminating news of the situation to all relevant groups. So essentially what they're saying is, we're going to tell on you, this is really bad press. ICANN, you're in for a world of hurt because, well, hey, this won't look good for you. So here's where I'm coming from. Like I said, I really don't think even Amazon really cares all that much about .amazon domains being available, because not many people are going to do shop.amazon. Not many people are going to go to services.amazon, Whole Foods.amazon, so on and so forth. The reason that I think Amazon wants the .amazon is probably to deter or reduce the amount of fraud and other bad things that can happen if you had a .amazon suffix available to web addresses. So think about if someone said prize.amazon. Maybe, unfortunately, someone would go to that web domain and they say, oh, prize.amazon, it's a prize from Amazon. Hey, maybe I won something. They would consider that more legitimate than something coming from Amazon.com, or just, for whatever reason. So it's one of those things that Amazon probably wants it just to protect their own IP. Whereas these 8 countries from South America, they probably want .amazon because it's part of their heritage. It's the Amazon rainforest is huge. It spans all these countries, and it's a major feature of their really of their culture. They want it so that they could potentially use it for whatever reason. Instead of using .com, they want to be able to use .amazon. So those governments use an intergovernmental process to formally object to .amazon, and ICANN responded by putting the application in legal limbo, presumably in the hope that Amazon would walk away. But they had reckoned without the online giant's determination, and after spending years and millions of dollars going through ICANN's review process, the tech giant emerged triumphant in 2017. So I guess just now they're actually available. So let's go ahead and talk about this. It's worth noting that Amazon won the independent review for the simple fact that neither ICANN nor the governments can actually stated their reasons for rejecting the application. Their rejection probably stems from the fact that this doesn't feel right. That's probably their rejection, which, wouldn't hold up in any kind of, sane court. So another year passed, and it became clear that to many of the government's strategy was to rely on ICANN's unwillingness to make a decision to drag the process out indefinitely. Behind the scenes, ICANN board members had accepted the recommendations of its legal department not to confront the governments, but had put in place a series of deadlines to ensure that there was some kind of progress. So they said that faced with a board decision, the South American governments delayed action again by appealing through ICANN's review process, and when that was completed, there was still no justification for stopping .amazon. ICANN finally announced that the issue was at an end and it would approve .amazon's sale to Amazon, the company, at its March 2019 meeting in Japan, 7 years after the initial application. But yet again, ICANN shrank from a belligerent ACTO, and again, ACTO being the organization of governments from South America. They said that claimed that any such decision would be illegitimate, and that the business CEO sending an apologetic letter to the organization. So, there you go. With that being said, if in doubt, as the article continues, if in doubt, do it in secret. Saying that, this secretive approach worked in one respect. There were only 4 comments when the comment deadline passed. This only served to infuriate the ACTO government, who felt, with some justification, that ICANN was trying to avoid scrutiny. The approach also worried observers, who again saw an ICANN making up a new process on the fly in an effort to skirt obligation rather than do its job properly and in full public view. I don't know. So, to wrap all this up, what does this mean? Where does it go from here? They're saying that so the ACTO is still furious, at least on paper, and the government representatives have learned that they can delay ICANN processes for years by sending the occasional letter and giving the occasional speech. In the end, it still took the intervention of the U.S. government to get the ball rolling. And all the companies in the world have learned again that when it comes to ICANN, its processes are unreliable and can at any point be overturned by arbitrary decisions made by unaccountable staff. Given the controversy surrounding ICANN in recent month, including extracting $20 million from VeriSign to sign the .com extension agreement, the uproar over the proposed sale of .org to an unknown equity firm, it is no wonder why calls to reform ICANN have grown louder in recent days. Yeah, so those calls to reform ICANN, and really, it's one of those things where ICANN is an organization that is private. It's a nonprofit organization. It is determined to assign names and numbers to anyone who kind of asks for them. It was kind of like an association that popped up through necessity for the early part of the internet. They kind of they kind of took it over. They dealt with www. They dealt with all the .coms, all the .orgs, all the .nets, all that kind of thing. They did something that needed done. Now that we are in a day and age where ICANN is so influential in determining who gets what on the internet, maybe it's time to look at that organization and say, shouldn't this be something that has a little bit more say rather than this loose-knit organization that was volunteered, and is now completely closed off from oversight or review? Honestly, I think ICANN's done amazing things over the past, really over the past 2 decades. They've done something that, without them, the internet today would not be what it is. Going forward, that might have to change. For better or worse, more accountability, more oversight in something that is so fundamental. You were playing with small pieces back in the day, whereas nowadays you're playing with these large trillion-dollar companies, and they really, really want these domains. Who gets what domain makes such a big difference in e-commerce, and it's maybe it is time to reform ICANN. I don't know, and definitely worth checking out. So there's that article. We have time for like 2 or 3 more articles if we if we don't go as long as we did on that one. But let's go ahead and talk about something obvious. One of my favorite examples of this has to do with the fact that in privacy notifications, or the end user license agreement, the thing that pops up and it's it's about 30 pages of legal jargon, and at the bottom it has to say, "I have read and I agree." And as we all know, the longest running joke on the internet, everyone has read those. Everyone has complied with those. Everyone fully understands what they're agreeing to before they hit the "I accept, let me get to my gosh darn iTunes." Things like that. No, turns out people don't really read those. And just another little log on that ever-burning fire. Let's go ahead and talk about Android. Which, let's be honest, compared to iOS, Android is the wild, wild west. You can do anything you want. There's really very little oversight. Google does its best to review and take down explicitly fraudulent apps, but anyone can kind of submit. And if you aren't going with some of the more notable ones, like if you really dig down in there are still tons of applications that are strictly either just straight up spyware or ripoffs, clones. It's a really messed up Android ecosystem out there. Now, with that being said, the point of this article, 14% of Android app privacy policies contain contradictions about data collection. There you go. So, an analysis of 11,430 Play Store apps found that about 14.2% used a privacy policy with contradicting statements about user data collection practices. So a large number of Android mobile apps listed in the official Google Play Store contain self-contradictory language in their privacy policies, saying that in an academic study published last year, researchers created a tool named Policy Lint that analyzed the language used in privacy policies of about 11,430 Play Store apps. So, and I'm sure that they went by ranking the amount of downloads. I'm sure that they went with the highest amount of downloads, not with the lowest, because clearly I feel like if you just went to the bottom of the bottom, 11,000 of the least downloaded apps would have almost 100% of contradictory language. And I have my ideas of why this is happening, but we should really get to the bottom of what impact does this have as well. So they found out of the 11,400 apps, about 1,600 of the apps contained a privacy policy with logical contradicting statements about data collections. And really, if you think about it, are people who are using all these different apps, how many times have we heard, wait, on page 32 of the privacy policy of so-and-so app, they contradict themselves as opposed to page 12, no one ever reports on that kind of thing. Journalists can't even be bothered to do this kind of thing. It's left up to the academics to do it because no one reads them. And yet they are the legal protections that are, that these companies have. There's been talk about that, but hey, we can talk about that a little bit later. Saying that in some cases templates are to blame, and this is really what I truly believe it is. When you have to write those 30-page legal filled documents to be your end user license agreement when you make a program, let's say that you make a program that pulls in news articles from all over the web, from all over the internet. And you have to have the end user license agreement. You have to have something in there to protect your butt. You're a programmer or you're a content manager. You're someone who really just is not a lawyer. What are you going to do? You're going to go to a website. You're going to copy and paste a template and paste it into your, program. And then on top of that, you're going to go back and try to fix, it's like, well, the template says this, but I really am going to collect this kind of data, so I need to change that. I agree with this. I don't agree with this. Things like that. They're going to change it, but they're not going to change it in a lot of places. That's where a lot of it comes back to, is that you have these templates that can be picked and put together, and they're going to not make any sense when they're taken as a whole. And that's a problem. So they said that they discovered evidence of the contrary. They said that while the research team could not determine the app maker's intent in using contradicting statements in the privacy policy, they feel the primary purpose was to mislead users if they ever took time to read the policies. However, they also discovered evidence of the contrary, saying that the research team found 59 apps that use online services to auto-generate a privacy policy. A deeper look at the online service revealed that the self-contradicting statements were part of the template itself and not the app maker's decision. So it wasn't so much malfeasance as it was just kind of negligence. So they said that I think we found four or five different templates, and that was from a member of IBM Research. saying, however, the vast majority of other privacy policies were unique to each app and did not appear to be the result of an accident. In these cases, the research team says that these app makers are susceptible to fines from EU and US privacy watchdog, which would be, of course, self-contradictions can lead to identification of deceptive statements, which are enforceable by the FTC and DPAs of the EU. So essentially what they're saying there is that by being purposely cagey, they are confusing their end user, and it could be harder to bring a legal matter to court. If for some reason that they take exception and then a lawyer comes up and actually does a deep dive into this thing, they're going to go, oh, well, we can't do XYZ because on page 24, when in reality, somewhere else, it could say something completely opposite that would protect them from the other end. So they said that from the 510 apps, the researchers team found contact emails for 260 developers, which they notified via email. Of the 260, 244 received the email, and 16 of the public contact email addresses ended up being either invalid or unreachable. Depending on where these applications come from and who developed them, I would say that, typos are a real thing. So it could have been that. Now, of the 244 emails that actually did go to a recipient, the researchers only received about 11 replies, following which only 3 developers corrected their policies. So they found 510 privacy policies with contradicting statements. They emailed, or of the 510 that they found, 260 had emails. Of the 260, 244 actually received the emails. And of the 244 that actually received the email, you're looking at 11 replying and only 3 actually taking action to fix the problems. So everywhere from 500 all the way down to 3 actually fixing the problem. It's crazy. So they have the white paper, and of course you can, dig into that as much as you want, but they found that about 10% of the 68,000 apps that they analyzed shared personal data with third-party services, yet they did not declare it in their privacy policies, and only about 22% explicitly named third-party partners or affiliates in their privacy policy, with the vast majority of apps hiding where collected user data ends up. So essentially what they're saying there, and again, I think that the numbers were going to be bad to begin with, just because it's Android. Android has a lower barrier to entry. Anyone can kind of throw an app up there, and unless it gets a certain amount of press, negative press against it, Google's not going to do much to weed out the really bad apps. So I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't think it would be this bad. This was an all-around a very interesting article. We highly recommend you go check it out from ZDNet. Now, we have time for just one more story. I'm trying to think. Okay, you know what? This would be a perfect story to kind of end on. This is coming to us from motherboard.vice. Very, very nice articles. And, we'll end this kind of on a light note. Scientists have identified, and I apologize to the indigenous people who I assume it's an indigenous word, but the Yara Bubba crater. Bubba. The Yara Bubba crater, which stretches for more than 40 miles across Western Australia, as the oldest impact structure on Earth. Check that out. The crater was formed about 2.229 billion years ago, if you're counting. That's 2,229,000,000 years ago, by a huge extraterrestrial rock that slammed into our planet, an event that may have played a major role in climate change during the era. So while the crater has been recognized as one of the oldest craters on our planet for years, a team of researchers used ancient crystals to produce the first precise age of this momentous impact. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you were on Earth about 2.229 billion years ago, you were very, very upset. So, yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and end it there. Music playing in the background means that we're about done. If you want to read more about this article, we'll throw it up in the show notes after the show. ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including show notes, links, articles, things like that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of great shows coming up for you. If you want to check that out, definitely stay tuned. And let me pull the calendar real quick. Tomorrow on the program, we should have the one, the only, Mr. Mike Cermak. We had to reschedule him from the beginning of the year, but it should be very, very cool to have him back on and, talk about all kinds of things. So Mike Cermak, he's a great guest. And until next time, everyone, thank you so much. We'll catch you then. Bye, everyone.